Hello, welcome to our optical mark recognition exam grader. This is the team comprised by Demian Velasco Gomez Llanos, Santiago Arreola Munguia, and Marco Antonio Manjarres Fernandez. First off, let's talk about what problem we solve. Grading multiple choice exams by hand is slow and error prone. What does our project seek to do? To automate this process using optical mark recognition and computer vision. What we are looking for is an algorithm that detects marked answers from scanned sheets and calculates the grades accordingly and automatically. What does it do? Firstly, it loads an exam image and normalizes it. This is to prepare it for the actual recognition. How it does it is by resizing it, grayscaling it, and getting rid of blur and adding edges to the places that it detects. Now, after that, it finds the main contours and keeps the rectangular candidates, aka the boxes where the answers are being written. Then it orders those corners and applies perspective warp, by meaning it flattens the sheet so that it is always square and not warped and at an angle. So even if the image is taken of the exam at an angle, the actual grading will be done on a flat image. And finally, it shows a stacked debug view of key stages for quick QA. This is just in case some manual input is required.
With the main outlines identified, the next step is corner reordering and perspective correction. We extract the four corners from both the sheet and the scoring box and rearrange them in a consistent order, top to bottom and left to right, to avoid confusion when applying the transformation. Then we apply the perspective wrap, which essentially flattens the image, correcting any tilt and rotation it may have had when scanned or photographed. This gives us a perfectly front-facing view of the sheet 700 by 700 pixels and the scoring box 320 by 150. In this way, the system can accurately analyze the responses. First, we perform a pre-processing stage to prepare the exam image. What we do is resize it to a fixed size of 700 by 700 pixels to maintain consistency across all cases. Then we convert the image to grayscale and apply a Gaussian filter to reduce noise, and finally use canny edge detection to detect the most relevant edges. This combination allows us to establish edge detection even if the lighting or scan quality isn't perfect. Once the image is pre-processed, we move on to the contour detection. Here we look for external contours that might represent important regions, such as the exam frame and the scoring box. To refine the result, we filter out only for rectangular contours with an area greater than 50 and a 4-point approximation. The contours are then sorted by size to identify the two main ones, the exam paper and the scoring box. In addition, we display a green overlay for visual verification, which helps us confirm that the detected contours are correct. Once the sheet is flattened, we apply binarization and thresholding, which converts the image to black and white. This allows us to clearly distinguish the marked bubbles from the empty ones. We divide the response area into grid of cells, one for each option, from A to E, and count the black pixels within each cell. The option with the most pixels is considered the selected answer. We repeat this process for all the questions, thus building a complete list of detected responses. Thanks to this method, the program can accurately identify which bubbles were filled, even if they are slight variations in the stroke. Finally, we compare the answers to the answer key. Each detected answer is evaluated, and if it matches the key, it is marked in green. If it is incorrect, it is marked red. Then the program calculates the total percentage of corners, answers, and write it directly onto the sheet in the scoring area. This allows us for immediate feedback, both visual and quantitative. In testing, the system correctly scored in different scenarios and displaying results such as 80% on the screen or in the printed exam.
Okay, so now we're gonna talk about how the code works exactly in a live demo that we can show you right now. So basically, in this slide, I'm going to show you a little example that we took from the internet and used it as a base for the entire project. And afterwards, we did our own very similar uh, format for these sort of answered sheets. So in this case, this sort of format really works well, and it really does work in other types of formats depending on how you want to orientate your entire project. But basically, with this type of formats in which you use the official encasing of the answer sheets, which is basically uh, a rectangle in which all the options are there, and one little rectangle which has the final grade of the exam. Basically, with this type of sheets, it detects the answers and compares them, and it can show them the ones that are correct and the ones that are not. Each question is marked in green if they are correct and red if incorrect, like you see in the image. And the total score is right there in the sheet at the end as a percentage of the final grade. So now if I show you the code, you can see that we have two different code parts of the code of the project. Basically, you have this, which is the main code, and then you have the utils, which is basically the part in which we use multiple of our uh, various functions that we made so that everything works out well and the code is not like a god file basically. So now if we run the code, you can see in this example on this image, which is the image 15 that I can show you right here. So basically, the first image is a stack of images of all the process that we already talked about. And in the end, it will have the final image with the final grading, which is this one in this example. So now if I press Q to close the code, in the end, it will show you the final result image, which you can see right here. And that's a really good thing for most people so that you can just save the image after using the program. And then obviously you can rename the file and then go for another exam. So it really is a bit useful right now in a short term, but I'm going to touch that next point later on. So now if we go here, I can show you that we have a few other examples. For example, these ones that are scanned and that were answered digitally. And then this one that has a very different angle and lighting as in contrast to the others. And then we have this one, which is the example that I just showed you. And this one that has crossed instead of drawn markings, and it actually shows which ones are the right and the ones that are wrong. So basically, as a summary of how the system was basically tested, uh, basically it it is very useful to give results with perfectly scanned sheets. It has really well shown results with light rotation images or some images with a bit of an uneven lighting. And some of the partial markings have a minor loss of inaccuracy because of the last point that I just mentioned. So now, as a conclusion, I'm going to say that the OMR system really works well with answer sheets using Computer vision, sorry. It handles minor rotation and lighting variation effectively. And our main challenges for this project was detecting the contours under low contrasts on some examples that I didn't show, and adjusting the thresholds in all the process was a bit of a challenge to see which were best values for the thresholds. And for future improvements, we want to check if later on, if we update this project and go a bit more further, we want to support for multiple marked answers, basically detect and grade if there are partial correct answers, which are the ones that are erased and the ones that they are filled again, or nullify multiple answered responses, which is basically if you're trying like to get a 50-50, nullify that answer. And the other thing is to improve the handling of complex angles, as I said before, and some of the perspective distortions for non-flat or rotated sheets, which is, for example, for a future update of this project, maybe to maybe add the possibility of using a webcam to do a to basically scan the answer sheets live and see the grades at the end live, so that you don't have to keep saving images over and over again at the end, which is still a good thing to do, but there can be other ways to maybe improve this. But I think that these are the two things that we might as well want to have at the end. So yeah, basically that's it for the presentation. And now I will pass it to Marco, so that you can see our project poster and just give it a final review.
Here's a very simple preview, or rather a small explanation on the algorithm using a simple poster. So first off, the algorithm uses image pre-processing to resize, grayscale, and smooth the image, and also using Gaussian blur algorithm. This is for preparation of the actual sheet detection, which uses the contour detection to identify the exam sheet and performs a perspective warp to have an aligned paper. Now, afterwards, the algorithm applies thresholding, which is converting the sheet into black and white and making filled bubbles easy to detect by pixel intensity, meaning the bubbles are now big white circles that the algorithm can detect as marked. And then that image is divided into a grid of questions so that it can determine the answers. The student responses are automatically compared to the answer key given by the user and computing total and percentages scores. Now we have the visual feedback. The original sheet, the original picture, is annotated with green for correct answers and red for incorrect ones. And that image is saved for quick verification in case it is needed. Finally, this algorithm has great repeatability. Given how the only step necessary is to give it a image as an input, the process is reusable and fast, and it minimizes manual input for easier grading for teachers, minimizing mistakes as well.